So weekend 2 of the Black Ops 6 beta is underway, and honestly, I thought there was a pleasant number of changes that made their way through into the patch notes. Yesterday we talked about the top level things, content and all. Today we're taking a look at the nitty gritty, the fine details and specific changes made to weaponry and other things that you should be aware of for the final few days of what we can play with Black Ops 6 before it launches next month. Drop your thoughts on the update and the changes made, drop a like if you enjoyed the video, and make sure to subscribe to stay up to date with all things Black Ops 6 and even more FPS content. We're pushing towards 600,000 subscribers, so if you're part of that nearly 75% of viewers that are not subscribed, I'd love to have you in the community as we chase down that milestone. But for now, let's get into it. So a brief recap. Level 30 is the new level cap here at this. You get 3 new rewards along the way, 2 new weapons, a few new perks, and a few field upgrades with those additional 10 levels. 2 more maps are being added over the weekend, and 2 more modes specific to strike maps that you can expect to play and interact with. But again, that's a recap. But here's what actually changed. Firstly, starting with the weapon tuning, we saw tuning to the Jackal PDW, C9, and the SWAT 556. If you're new to the channel, when we talk about these kind of patch notes, what we do in visualization is on screen, you'll see the patch notes highlighted in red, green, or yellow. Red denotes a nerf, green denotes a buff, making it better, and then yellow is just kind of a correction. It doesn't really help anything one way or the other, but it's just fixing a bug per se. The Jackal PDW, though, was definitely the most used weapon of the beta in weekend 1, but I'm curious if it will still be that #1 pick right after this, because on paper there's some substantial changes. One of the most notable is that first one of that max damage, which may make it noticeably weaker up close, but you start to see the drop off even further when you get further out to range. The medium damage and the minimum damage were dropped 4 points, while those ranges were also adjusted and made shorter, definitely introducing a shot or 2 more to kill, meaning that it's not nearly going to be as effective at range, which is how a sub kind of should be. It shouldn't be challenging those longer range rifles, but it definitely was within weekend 1. The C9 was also adjusted, where with one weapon being nerfed, another one is going to be elevated. It's not nearly as heavy on the adjustments, but it should give it a competitive edge in the SMG category, I think at least, with a medium damage range increase by just about 2 meters, now extending further than the PDWs at that sort of range classification. So until you're shooting to the max range possible, where the damage drop off just becomes permanent, it's got that slight leg up on the PDW for some of those ranged fights. And then the SWAT 556, it disabled burst fire queuing, which was queuing an additional burst if the fire input was activated at any time during the previous burst or the burst cooldown. So again, a bug correction there, or yellow highlighting of this. But beyond that, we saw some additional weapon tuning, not specific to just individual weapons, but more so classification adjustments. We saw adjustments to movement speeds and weapon swap speeds. Now, for the movement speeds, in their words, Treyarch's, we are making small adjustments to baseline movement speeds on all weapon classes to make sure that they're sitting in a good spot relative to one another. We have mostly focused on move speeds and ADS move speeds, which come into play during combat engagements. Overall, we are happy with the weapon class usage and performance we've seen in beta weekend 1, as well as the upper end of movement pacing offered by SMGs. So these adjustments keep SMGs the same and generally improve other classes. These are all ultimately buffs across the board to all of these weapon classes, except for one individual attribute of crouch speed for snipers, pistols, and launchers only. These changes may or may not be instantly noticeable when you jump in today after playing weekend 1. Like, a lot of them are a matter of less than half a meter per second more in move speed, but it should pick up the pace ever so slightly, that compounding, it'll be a lot quicker to get from A to B if you're traversing the entirety of the map perhaps, but those adjustments were made to your mobility. Weapon swap speeds were another big thing that were additionally changed here, that this was definitely something that I noticed, and maybe you noticed as well in weekend 1. Swapping between primary and secondary, it did feel kind of clunky and a little slow. Across the board, we saw the ARs, SMGs, shotguns, LMGs, marksmans, pistols, and launcher times reduced by 50 milliseconds, or rather, sped up by 50 milliseconds, because it's the time to drop your weapon while picking up the other. The snipers, on the other hand, were doubled to make them 100 milliseconds faster. So looking forward to seeing how this feels at base today. And then, of course, it was mentioned in the patch notes that we do have the option to equip fast hands here in weekend 2 as we progress through to that new level cap of 30. So you do have a perk you can equip to make it even faster, but beyond that, the only other thing in weaponry was the rapid fire attachment. It correctly displays recoil penalties now as a con in your gunsmith options. The attachment description has also been updated to indicate that trade-off. Now, that's the weaponry, but again, we had a lot of other big things adjusted as well. Spawns being another big one that we needed some work on after weekend 1, and Treyarch did agree. Now, as of recording this video, I don't know to what degree or what maps will be changed, recording this before the beta has gone live earlier today, but they didn't grant many specifics besides that they just adjusted general spawn logic to enable additional valid spawns under certain scenarios, and adjusted spawn logic across several maps with a goal of reducing a high frequency of spawn flipping. But they did explain their reasoning and sort of design philosophy for all of these changes that were made. But buckle up and bear with me because it is kind of a long-winded but also insightful explanation. Our long-standing definition of a bad spawn is anytime a player deals or receives damage within 3 seconds of spawning. This is the cornerstone of building the spawn system and does not change regardless of map size or game mode. We use this metric, among others, to track bad spawn rates for Black Ops 6, meaning that if you dealt or received damage within 3 seconds in weekend 1 of the beta, we saw it. As an example, our core mosh pit entry with the highest bad spawn rate in week 1 was domination on Skyline with a 4.2% rate, which means 4.2 out of every 100 spawns saw someone give or receive damage within that 3-second window. While we are generally happy with our averages, we know that an average also consists of worst cases, and we'll continue to assess throughout the lifetime of this game. We also recognize that we each have our own definition of what a good or bad spawn is, and that's not always just about combat situations. For example, did I spawn too far out from the hard point, or why am I spawning on the same side of the map as the enemy? The overarching spawn system and the placement of spawns in a map are critical to the flow of each match. It is our goal with Black Ops 6, as it has been every prior Black Ops game, to have a predictable spawn system that results in head-on engagements with your opponents while providing ample time for respawn for decision making. This includes accounting for time before getting into an engagement before you're ready for it. For weekend 2 of our open beta, we've adjusted general spawn logic and have targeted multiple maps with additional tuning changes with a goal of improving predictability and the time to engagement. We know we have some work to do and will continue to process our data, evaluate your feedback, and play the game with you, all to draw our own conclusions on how to continue making positive progress. So I think probably one of the general concerns or maybe critiques of this is the fact that we have maps that are so small. Like when you take a look at those strike maps in particular, obviously that might be an outlier because they're so small, but when you take a look at like the new map of Babylon, or you take a look at even, again, Skyline was that one used as an example, they're still relatively small and a lot of the combat will bleed over into those spawn points. So when you have just maps that are that small, that's almost an inherent problem with it. However, it seems like they're focusing more so on perhaps almost entire flipping and those pressure points pushing you out to an entire different spawn point. But we'll see how it all works out within weekend 2. Again, this is just the design philosophy they laid out. No real specifics or anything like that. And again, recording this before playing, don't have offhand any sort of update for you on how it feels to me. But beyond that, we saw some additional changes here for weekend 2 in the way of progression, movement, audio, and more. Progression, the weapon XP, again, it was mentioned that in weekend 1, the earn rates of XP for weapons was lower than intended, and they ended up saying they increased the weapon XP rewards. We don't quite know to what degree that is, what percentage of a change it was, but we do know that we're going to get weapon XP faster. Daily challenges were fixed. Movement, we saw slight increases to the time to enter prone or supine during a slide, making that a little slower, which might be something that sounds weird, but it also was something that I feel like I saw a lot of reports of people saying that it almost skipped that slide. I know whenever I was playing hybrid with the sort of auto tac sprint workaround, I didn't slide. I just went right into a feet first dive, which was always weird. And then we saw slight increases to all mantle speeds, a decrease to the time before movement is allowed after landing from a dive to prone, making that a little faster, and a slight increase to dive to prone landing friction, meaning you might not slide as much if I'm understanding that as properly. Audio, we saw an increase to the player weapon firing audio volume, additional footstep audio adjustments, reductions in the audio levels for impact sounds when taking damage, and resolutions to a few bugs in relation to shotguns, explosions, and some sounds not playing during best play. They also re-enabled a previously disabled audio occlusion system on PlayStation 5, which is interesting. Don't know that I heard about that one, but that would actually make a world of a difference for trying to discern where, say, footstep audio is coming from. We saw some score streak changes where the RCXD improved handling and general usability, the Watchdog Helo had an increase to the base health, and the Hellstorm saw an increase to the cluster bomb damage radius. The equipment, the Thermo Grenade, saw a reduction in the explosive ignition delay, making it a little faster to explode, and then you had some smaller stability issues and fixes. The notable ones for me: settings for PC and mouse and keys. Users will no longer encounter issues when switching their ADS transition timing to instant, again making that aim feeling floaty whenever it was there. there and having that sort of pre-Modern Warfare 3 Season 2 idle sway effect to it. And then we saw a general increase to the duration of the lobby vote time before matches to give players a better opportunity to participate in that map voting. They also saw a reduction in the amount of camera motion in that dynamic death cam. So if you got a little motion sick off this, that should hopefully now reduce that a bit where it's not as sort of violent. But anyways, that is the update here for weekend 2 of the Black Ops 6 beta. And again, like I said, a lot of changes. I wasn't really expecting this in terms of quantity, and also I appreciate some of the depth and what they described too, like the spawn system. It's nice to hear what they describe a good or bad spawn as. I love the fact that we're also seeing, even though we don't have the specific values in game with advanced stats just yet, not until the launch of the game, but we're also seeing in the beta patch notes those exact numerical values for attributes being listed out for us to see. So love that kind of stuff, but pleasantly surprised with the size of this update. Now again, if it translates into good gameplay, that I still don't know of. For the third time here, haven't quite played as the time of recording this just yet, but anyways, that's where we're at. Let me know your thoughts down below. How does it feel to you guys if you have played before watching this video? Good, bad, let me know. But if you guys enjoyed the video, you found it at all insightful, do me a favor and drop a like on it. And if you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss a single thing regarding all things Black Ops 6 as we gear up for not only weekend 2 here, but all the launch festivities moving forward into next month. I'd love to have you in the community as we chase down 600,000 subscribers. But for now, thanks so much for watching. My name is Espresso. I'll see you later. Take care and peace.